Okay, hello. Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, so you guys received that email from the academic section about giving your feedback. So I hope you've done that. What I would suggest is today we maybe spend a couple of minutes trying to understand how things are going. Right? We are at the middle of the semester. Is there something we can do to make this better? Okay, that's the idea. Can we do something differently? Can we? Should I change something? Should I? Uh, you know, what else can we do, right? Because obviously, I mean, nobody can claim that this is the perfect situation. So let's try to improve it. Anybody, just a couple of minutes quickly. Any suggestions for improving? I'm not moving ahead if nobody speaks up. Somebody has
Uh,
to. Yeah.
Sir, is it possible that we can have some videos of practical examples uh, of the concepts that we are learning?
Okay. So when you say practical examples, what do you mean?
Sir, as in laboratory experiments of,
Ah,
say, experiments that show how suction pressure works or how infiltration happens that way.
sure. So this is the thing. Um, I'm sure some kind of videos like this might be available on YouTube. Uh, you go ahead and search for it. If you find something interesting, send them to me. I'll also look out for it. And if I find videos that are illustrating the concepts that we are interested in, I'll share them on the Google Classroom. Okay. But this is something that is open to everybody. Okay. If you find something that might be useful for the rest of the class, share it on that Google Classroom. Or you can send it to me and I'll share it. I'll take a look at it, make sure it's appropriate, and then I'll share it. No issues. This is something that, see, the material is available outside for everybody to see. We just have to make an effort to go and search for it, right? Um so yeah, sure. Okay, that's one possibility. Anything else? In the way, see, I realize that I might be going relatively slowly, but I don't want to go any faster because, you know and I might be repeating the same thing multiple times. I recognize that, right? But see, when you're sitting in front of a screen, it's very easy to just wander away for 10 seconds and then you come back, and then if I keep moving on, and then, I mean, that's my philosophy. I don't know whether it's working out the right way or not. So you have to tell me. See, somebody has to give me feedback, and only then, I mean, because eventually you are the recipient of the information. So I'm looking at it from my point of view. I need to hear from you guys. Anybody else? Any suggestions? What can we do better? I mean, or something that you have noticed in some other lecturers or professors lecture, and you think, hey, that's a good thing that they're doing. Why don't we do that in this class as well? That's also fine, right? So if you maintain silence, then there's nothing I can do. I mean, then what that means is you're saying indirectly that I'm doing a perfect job, that this is the best that anybody can teach. I'm not willing to believe that. But yeah, if you if you guys keep quiet, then that's the assumption that I have to make, that everything's fine. There's nothing that I need to change, and let me just keep going the way that I'm going. Is that okay? Okay. So yeah,
Presently working well
what is
for
that?
us. I guess presently it's working well for us. We're able to understand stuff. So
Okay. So all right. So fine. Thank you. So maybe, does that mean I can go a little bit faster?
yeah, I guess.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay. Let's see how things go. All right. So let me share my screen. So we've been talking about estimating runoff. So today
Sir,
we are going to, yes,
sir, I have a doubt in infiltration.
go ahead.
Sir, like while calculating infiltration from real data, we make a lot of assumptions.
Hmm.
So, sir, I mean, uh, we do not know what the correct answer would be. We are just working on assumptions. So, I mean, if we come up with an answer, how do we check whether it will be correct or not? Because infiltration would change. I mean, the quality of land surface would change with time. So, even if we have previous year's data, that may not be very much workable.
Okay, so when you say quality of the land surface will change with time, what do you mean by that?
Sir, I mean the porosity may change because if we have rocks somewhere, they tend to erode with time. So I mean the
Okay, so
particle sizes may change.
yeah, sure. See, this erosion is a process that takes place over decades and so on, right? If you're talking about rocks, every year you may have a little bit of erosion happening, but I don't know if it will change the porosity, whether it will change the fundamental characteristic of the soil itself. Uh, See, those are things that see. Now the question that you have is, I'm getting some number from whatever I'm doing, right? With the real data. How do I know this number is any good, right? So at this point in time, you don't know if it's good. Number one, you believe that the data is perfect, and you're trying to fit your model to that data. Okay, so let's assume that the data is good. Okay, let's not even get into the territory where we are talking about the data being bad in the first place. If the data is perfectly good, right, then whatever your model suggests. So far, whatever models we've been using, they've all assumed that the soil is homogeneous, that it's all just one nice type of soil, and that at least in the case of the green amp method, for example, that when the infiltration starts, the entire soil column has the same moisture content throughout its depth, right? That theta I that we used in the green amp method, and so on. So we made lots of assumptions that might not necessarily be true. Okay, so therefore, to say that this number that I'm getting out of it is perfectly correct, or it is to even say it's probably 80% right or 90% right, may be difficult. What we can say is qualitatively, right? If the soil in your region is let's say sandy, right, you would expect a greater proportion of the rain to become infiltration. If it's a clay, silty, that kind of soil, then you do expect that a lesser proportion of your rainfall will get converted into infiltration. Okay, to get a to be able to say with a lot of certainty exactly how much the infiltration is, exactly how much the other components are, you will have to do an entire water budget, right? That entire equation, P plus I plus R, whatever it is, right? Precipitation, infiltration, runoff. You have to take everything into account, and then you will have uncertainty in each of those terms, right? So therefore, the only way to come up with a very certain analysis is to do an entire water budget for the watershed or whatever you're looking at, right? Now, the way we are doing it is we are looking at one process and trying to understand only that process, ignoring evaporation, ignoring evapotranspiration, ignoring runoff, everything we are ignoring, and we're just looking at infiltration and trying to understand that. Okay, when you do that, you have to make a lot of assumptions, and it might not be the accurate estimate of what infiltration is in reality. But the objective is not to get a correct answer, right? The objective is to develop an understanding of the process, right? So therefore, do not be, when you're working on the project, right? I recognize that this is all coming out of questions related to your project. Do not be under the impression that you have to get a number that is correct, right? If your approach is reasonable, if your assumptions are reasonable, if your approach is logical, right, and you get some answer out of it, right, and that answer may be 10% correct, 20% correct, 100% correct, whatever it may be, don't worry about the answer. Worry about the process that you follow. Worry about the assumptions that you make. Worry about how reasonable those assumptions are. Do not worry about the correctness of the answer. Okay, that is not the objective here. All right,
Okay,
is
sir.
that okay? Okay, so let's let's get back into estimating our runoff. So far we have looked at multiple methods for estimating runoff. What is the first one we used? We've looked at two methods, two broad methods. First one was using the phi index, right? The phi index is a method where we average out all the whether it is the interception losses, whether it is the losses due to depression storage, or the losses to infiltration. When I say loss, I mean assuming precipitation is incoming and runoff is the output. All of these other processes are losses. Okay, so phi index is some kind of an average way of looking at all of these processes and estimating the runoff or the excess rainfall. Okay, that was the first one. The second one was using the infiltration equations, right? Where you know that rainfall is coming in at a certain rate, okay, which may be variable with time. You know the type of soil, you know the initial moisture content or whatever it is, right? And then you estimate the time of ponding for that particular type of soil. And then you say, okay, so until time of ponding is reached, all the rainfall must become infiltration. After time of ponding is reached, a portion of the rainfall will become runoff. The rest of it will infiltrate at the whatever the infiltration rate of the soil is, and so and thereby you compute what the excess rainfall is or the runoff is, right? So these two methods may have different approaches, but the objective is to estimate the excess rainfall. Now we are going to look at another way of estimating the excess rainfall or the runoff. Okay, and this is called the SCS curve number method. So this SCS curve number. Okay, so this SCS, let me just go through some of the terminologies. So this SCS is the Soil Conservation Service. Okay, Soil Conservation Service is a unit of the Department of Agriculture in the United States. Okay, so this method was developed in the 1960s by the US Department of Agriculture. Under the US Department of Agriculture, there is what is called the Soil Conservation Service. That group developed this curve number method. Okay, so now the curve number method, the assumption under which this works is fairly simple. Okay, so for a given time interval delta t, okay, they came up with an equation that represents all the processes that are relevant uh, uh, for estimating runoff. Okay, so here's the equation: P, precipitation, equal to I subscript A plus F plus PE. Okay, now P is precipitation. What do you think IA is? Can anybody tell me what IA is? It's one of the processes that we've been looking at so far. It's initial abstraction. Okay, so IA is initial abstraction, which comprises of what?
Interception and depression storage.
Interception and depression storage. All right, very good. So that's your initial abstraction, and then capital F is your cumulative infiltration. Okay, so this capital F, sorry, cumulative infilt. Okay, I'll just stop with that. And then this PE is your excess rainfall. Excess rainfall, in other words, runoff, or in other words, effective precipitation, and so on. Okay, all of these different terminologies mean the same thing. Okay, so these are the different processes. They have ignored obviously evaporation, ET, and so on, right? So they're saying precipitation comes in, some of it gets captured by initial abstraction, some of it becomes infiltration, and the rest of it is runoff. Okay, for any given delta T. Okay, for a given delta T, they have come up with this simple equation to understand what runoff is. Okay, then they come up with a series of assumptions to try to simplify this equation and try to come up with an effective way of estimating how much the runoff is from this equation. Okay, So the first assumption, okay, so now bear with me, this is a little bit of, you'll have to imagine these things, okay. So they first come up with a ratio which they call the ratio of actual runoff to maximum potential runoff, okay. Ratio of actual runoff to maximum potential runoff. So actual runoff is PE, P suffix E is actual, P subscript E is your actual runoff. Maximum potential runoff, they are saying, is P minus IA. Okay, do you agree with that? Maximum potential runoff is P minus IA. What does that mean?
There's no infiltration.
There's no infiltration, right? If no infiltration happens, which means, assume that the soil is already completely saturated, right? There has been multiple rainfall events in the previous 5 days, 10 days, whatever it is. Okay, soil is completely saturated, then it starts raining. Okay, in that delta T, if it starts raining when the soil is already completely saturated, no infiltration is possible, right? Or very little infiltration is possible. We'll assume that it's almost zero, which means you've reached time of ponding. Time of ponding is already reached when the rainfall starts because the soil is already saturated. Okay, so then maximum potential runoff is P minus IA, where you're saying infiltration is almost negligible. Okay, almost zero. Okay, so the ratio of actual runoff is PE divided by P minus IA, which is the maximum potential runoff. Okay, so this is one ratio. Then we'll come to one more ratio. The next ratio is ratio of actual infiltration to maximum potential infiltration. Okay, so now we have come up with a new terminology, maximum potential infiltration. Okay, so actual infiltration is capital F, and then this maximum potential infiltration, we have come up with this new terminology, capital S, new symbol, capital S. Okay, actual infiltration to maximum potential infiltration. Okay, now this is the part that you have to understand. Okay, so they came up with these two ratios, and then they said for any given watershed. Okay, so this is the assumption or the hypothesis behind this approach. For any given watersheds, these two ratios are equal. Okay, or that they're approximately equal. Okay, so does this make sense to you? Why would these two ratios be equal, or why would these two ratios be kind of similar? Anybody has an idea why we have this? Why are we equating these two ratios? Okay, so let me try to explain this with a okay, you all know this idea of a, okay, so just imagine this triangle. Okay, on this side of the triangle, let me call it my uh, maximum potential runoff, P minus IA. Okay, then if my actual runoff is somewhere over here, okay, this is PE. Okay, so then if you take these two triangles, which are, what are they called? They're similar triangles or whatever, right? So you can take the ratio of these two sides, and then so we'll say PE divided by P minus IA. What about the other two sides of the triangle? Okay, so now I'm going to say that this side of the triangle is kind of capital S. Okay, and then this remaining, the smaller portion is capital F. Oops, sorry. Okay, so think about it like this. If I have these two kind of similar triangles, okay, then I'm equating these. It might not be a good analogy. I'm still thinking of a way of explaining this better. If I have a situation where I have maximum potential runoff happening, which means infiltration is almost zero, right? So then I have this ratio P divided by P minus IA. That is one ratio. Okay. Then on the other hand, I have the actual infiltration, which is F, and then I come up with this new terminology called maximum potential infiltration, and that I say is capital S. So these two ratios, if these two ratios are equal, okay, let's just work with the hypothesis that these two ratios are somehow equal. Okay, then can I rearrange this equation that I've got previously into something that makes that's something that we can work on a little bit. Okay, so let me try to rearrange this equation. So here I have PE divided by P minus IA equal to F divided by S, right? So I'll skip these steps, or maybe we'll I'm just rearranging this equation. This is the final expression that you get. Okay, so I say PE equal to F into P minus IA divided by S. Okay, now I have to use these two equations together to try to come up with, okay, it's a little bit, I don't have any space left now. 1 second. Erase this, I'll use this portion. Yeah, okay. So then let's write F from this equation. From this equation, F, what is F? P minus IA minus PE, right? So then here, this equation, I'll rewrite it a little bit over here. PE equal to P minus IA minus PE multiplied by P minus IA divided by S. You agree? You agree with what I've done? I've simply rearranged it, and instead of this capital F over here, I've replaced it with P minus IA. Okay. So then it becomes P minus IA square minus PE into P minus IA whole thing divided by S. Is that okay? So then when I take all the PE terms to one side, I'll get something like this. PE, okay, I really don't have space here. Okay, sorry, I should have planned this a little bit better. Let me, oops. Okay, so now I'm just rearranging the PE terms on one side. I have PE into 1 plus P minus IA divided by S equal to P minus IA square divided by S. Is that okay? Oh, wait a second. Yeah, I think it's okay. The algebra is correct, right? The algebra is fine. Okay, so then this term will become PE into P minus IA plus S divided by S equal to P minus IA whole square divided by S. So this S on both sides, it gets cancelled, and then you're left with P equal to P minus IA square divided by P minus IA plus S. You see this expression over here? It's simple rearrangement of the terms. Okay, let me erase all this. Is this okay? How I obtained from this equation, how I got this equation, is that okay? All right. So now I have this expression for the effective rainfall or the runoff in terms of P, which is my rainfall, and IA, which is the initial abstraction, and S, which is this new term that we've come up with, which is the maximum potential infiltration. Okay. All right. So now let's try to, then here there's one more hypothesis. See, this whole thing is filled with hypotheses. So we'll try to work on that. So we are going to say that this initial abstraction is some component of this maximum potential infiltration. This initial abstraction is some ratio of this maximum potential infiltration, some lambda times S. This lambda varies from 0.1 to 0.3. We will use lambda equal to 0.2. Okay. So if I take lambda equal to 0.2 and substitute that into this equation, what do I get over here? What happens to this equation? Is P equal to P minus IA square divided by P minus IA plus S. If I substitute IA equal to 0.2 S into this expression, I get PE equal to P minus 0.2 S whole square divided by P plus 0.8 S. Okay. So now see, this is the challenging part about this this whole procedure is to understand the motivation behind this, right? The motivation behind this is that if I can come up with an understanding of how different watersheds behave, right? How different watersheds behave in terms of the kind of runoff that is generated given a rainfall event. Now, how a given watershed behaves given a runoff event depends on multiple factors, right? The kind of soil that's present, the kind of land use that's present, the kind of vegetation that's present. All of these play a role, and the kind of rainfall you've received in the past. Right? All of these factors play a role in determining how the runoff will be generated or how much runoff will be generated from a given watershed. The idea is to come up with an approach where you can say, if I know the kind of soil in my watershed, if I know the kind of land use in my watershed, if I know the rainfall that has been received in the watershed in the previous 5 days or 10 days or whatever it is, then given a rainfall event right now today, I can estimate what the runoff will be. If I know all of these factors using some kind of a simplified approach, right? Where you don't have to go in and try to, to find out infiltration into that particular soil, find out how much time of ponding is and do all of that. None of that is required. To come up with a simplified approach, okay, you may think that all of these assumptions are complicated and so on, but the end result that you get from it is a very powerful equation. Okay, please hang on. Okay, so at this point we've got an expression for PE in terms of P, which we know, and then this S, which we have no idea about. At this point in time, we don't know what this capital S is. Okay, so we will work out what this S is, in the next. Okay, yeah, of course, and then in this equation, if my P is less than or equal to lambda S, then PE will be equal to 0, right? If P is less than 0.2 S, okay, for some situation, then you'll have no runoff. Okay, that's of course just a mathematical thing, right? To make sure that you don't produce runoff in a situation where you only receive a little bit of rainfall, you put that number in, this equation will give you some answer. If you know S, right? If you know the value of S and you know the value of P, you just put it into this, you will get a positive answer, because the numerator is always going to be positive because it's a square. The denominator is always going to be positive because P and S are positive quantities. So no matter what your P is, you will always get a PE which is positive. Okay, but the problem is, if the P is less than 0.2 S, then it's physically impossible to have any rainfall. Physically impossible to have any runoff, right? So that is one check that you apply in this. When you use this equation, you have to check if P is greater than lambda S or 0.2 S, if assuming lambda is 0.2. If P is less than or equal to 0.2 S or lambda S, you will say there's no runoff generated. Okay, so that's the only the only physical correction that you apply when you use this equation. Now, so far we have developed an equation which gives you PE in terms of P and S. S at this point we don't know what it is. Okay, so to find out this S, to obtain this value of S, which is the maximum potential infiltration, we have this concept of a curve number, right? So if you remember, the name of this method itself is the SCS curve number method, right? So for now we are going to try to find out what this curve number is. So this SCS method has come up with an empirical equation that tells you how this S is related to the curve number. Okay, S equal to 1000 divided by Cn minus 10. Okay, now unfortunately this equation you will have to memorize. There's nothing else you can do. Okay, because this is the standard equation, of course. And then remember that this equation was developed in the United States. Okay, so in the US, if you know, they still use inches instead of centimeters and millimeters and so on. So if you go to the previous equation, on this page, you see PE equal to P minus 0.2 S square divided by P plus 0.8 S. All of this this entire equation, this equation is independent of your units. You can use centimeters, you can use inches, you can use millimeters, whatever you want in this equation. But the next equation, this equation that you have over here, this equation is in terms of inches. Okay, if you want to write this equation in terms of centimeters or millimeters, you have to multiply it by the appropriate correction factor, right? What is the correction? How many millimeters in an inch? How many millimeters in an inch? How many millimeters in an inch?
Around 25.
Yeah, 25.4, right? So if you multiply this equation by 25.4, you will get S in terms of millimeters. If you multiply it by 2.54, you'll get it in terms of centimeters. Okay, so you can use this equation. That's not a problem. Okay, but this curve number is a number which which is a dimensionless, unitless number. Okay, so it's just a number. Okay, you put that into this equation and you get this S number, which is the maximum potential infiltration in your watershed. Okay, so now how do we get this curve number? What is this curve number? Okay, so here I have a chart that was developed by the Soil Conservation Service, which has on the x-axis the cumulative rainfall P in inches. Okay, remember all of this is in inches, but you can very easily convert it to centimeters or millimeters. And on the y-axis I have the direct runoff PE in inches. Okay, so for different values of rainfall, how much runoff is generated, they've come up with this empirical curve. Now this curve is based on data, looking at hundreds and hundreds of watersheds and looking at the different kinds of soils, different kinds of land use. Looking at all of that, they've come up with this curve. Now this curve, all of these different solid lines that you see over here, those correspond to different curve numbers. Okay, if you put in curve number equal to 100 here, what do you get? If you put in curve number equal to 100 over here, what will you get?
0.
S equal to 10 minus
0.
10, 0.
So,
If S equal to 0, come back to this equation, the previous slide. If S equal to 0, how much is PE? If S
1.
equal to 0,
P.
not PE equal to P, not 1. PE equal to P, which means all the runoff, all the rainfall has become converted into runoff. Now, what kind of a surface will give you that?
Impermeable.
Completely impervious. Suppose I have a road. If your entire watershed is fully covered with roads, or covered with parking lots and so on, where you have impervious surfaces. Whatever rainfall comes in, the soil plays no role in it. All that rainfall simply gets converted to runoff. Okay, so that's the physical way of understanding this, right? So this line over here, which has a 45-degree slope, is for curve number equal to 100, which means if rainfall is 4 inches, runoff is also 4 inches. So if you see this line passes through, it has slope of 1, which means whatever x value of x is, value of y will also be the same. So that is for curve number equal to 100, right? And then you have curve number 95, 90, 85, 80, and so on, all the way down to 20, right? So as curve number decreases, what happens to S? S keeps
Increasing.
S keeps increasing. If S keeps increasing, runoff keeps decreasing, right? If S keeps increasing, runoff keeps decreasing, right? So here you have these different curves which tell you how much runoff will be generated if so and so amount of rainfall is observed in a given watershed, for any given watershed. Now this is the beauty of this chart. This chart does not take into account the size of the watershed, right? Because it's all normalized. This is normalized for any given watershed, right? If I tell you that the curve number of this watershed is 60, then you will just come to this curve which corresponds to 60 and then say, okay, I received 7 inches of rainfall, then I must have produced about 2.5 inches of runoff if the curve number of this watershed is 60. So I can use this without worrying about the area of the watershed. Now, isn't that very powerful, right? You've come up with a curve that can be used no matter what the size of the watershed is. All you need to know is the curve number of the watershed. Okay. So you recognize how powerful this tool is, right? Just by knowing this one number, this curve number of a given watershed, you are able to find out what runoff will be generated, no matter what the size of the watershed is. Okay, irrespective of the size of the watershed, if I know this the curve number, I can find out how much runoff was generated if I know how much rainfall was received. Okay, so this curve number depends on soil type and it depends on land use. So if you go to any of the standard hydrology textbooks, you will see some kind of a table like this. Okay, this table has these different land use categories: cultivated land, pasture, meadow, forest, open space, commercial and business areas, industrial districts, and so on. These are all the different kinds of land use. Okay, that's given in these different rows. In the columns, I have the different kinds of soil groups. So what they've done is they've divided soil into these 4 groups: A, B, C, D, right? So A group, this soil group A corresponds to sand and aggregated silts and loess and so on. Group B corresponds to sandy loam and that kind of soil. Group C corresponds to clayey loam, sandy loam, and those kinds of soil. Group D corresponds to clays and so on, right? So for these different types of soils, I have these different types of groups A, B, C, D, and for the different land use, I have all of these different categories, and for all of them, these are the corresponding values of the curve number. Look at that. So if I have cultivated land of soil group A, the curve number will be 72. If I have cultivated land of soil group B, the curve number will be 81, and so on, right? So for all of these different types, I have the different values of curve number. So now, if I give you a watershed which has a certain kind of land use and a certain kind of soil, you just come to this table, extract out all these numbers, compute the curve number for that watershed, come to this graph, look at the rainfall that you received, right? Take the curve number, find the corresponding curve on this plot, and then find out where it intersects. You obtain the curve number, the runoff produced. Okay, so this big equation that I wrote over here This P minus 0.2s whole square divided by P plus 0.8s, right? You don't even need to use this equation. If you have this chart and you know the curve number of your watershed, you simply compute the curve number, come to this one. If you know the rainfall, you estimate the runoff simply by looking at the different curves, right? Is that okay? Okay. So now there's one more factor that determines this curve number, which I spoke about earlier, which I have not yet spoken about, which is the moisture conditions of the soil, right? The curve number also depends on antecedent moisture conditions, which means how much rainfall has been received in the past. Okay. And when I say the past, I don't mean 10 years back and 20 years back. I mean the previous 1 week or about 5 days. Okay. So here is a table that classifies the antecedent moisture conditions, right? So here I have antecedent moisture conditions, AMC, is classified into 3 types, 1, 2, and 3. AMC2 is what is called the normal conditions. Okay, AMC2 is normal, AMC1 is dry, AMC3 is wet. Okay, so AMC2 is normal. Oops. Normal, AMC1 is dry conditions, AMC3 is wet. Okay, so which means total 5-day antecedent rainfall in inches. All of this is in inches. Okay, for the different seasons of the year. If in the last 5 days I have received between 1.4 to 2.1 inches of rainfall, that is considered normal. If I have received more than 2.1 inches of rainfall, then that is considered a wet condition. If I have received less than 1.4 inches of rainfall, then it's considered dry conditions. Okay. Now this is the so these 3 different conditions of antecedent moisture conditions. Okay. Okay. Let me go back to that table. This table that you saw was, if you see over here, runoff curve numbers for selected agricultural, suburban, and urban land uses, antecedent moisture condition 2, and IA equal to 0.2s, right? Which is the assumption that we made earlier. For antecedent moisture condition 2, these are the curve numbers. Okay. And suppose I have antecedent moisture conditions 1 or 3, what do I do? Then I have, yeah, so the C and the curve number shown previously is for antecedent moisture condition 2. So whatever was shown in that previous table is for normal antecedent moisture conditions, which means if in the previous 5 days, so many millimeters of so many inches of rainfall was received, then it's normal. If it's less than so much, then it's dry. If it's more than so much, then it is wet, right? So we know the curve number for normal conditions. What about for dry? Then there's one more empirical equation. It looks very scary. I can, don't worry about memorizing these equations. If you are required to solve these problems, in an exam or so on, these equations will be provided to you. Don't worry about it. Do not memorize these equations, right? So the curve number for dry conditions is a function of curve number of normal conditions. So you will go to that table, obtain the curve number for normal conditions, and then apply this equation, this empirical equation. This gives you the curve number for dry conditions, right? 4.2 Cn of normal conditions divided by 10 minus 0.058 curve number of normal conditions. So this is for the dry condition. And then similarly, I have curve number for wet conditions, which is another empirical equation. You don't have to memorize all these things, okay? So these kinds of equation, if required, will be provided to you, okay? So then this gives you the curve number for dry and wet and for normal conditions. Then if you know the curve number, then is it not straightforward to find out what the runoff will be for a given watershed? Right? And this approach is typically used, oops, I'm sorry. This approach is typically used for estimating daily runoff. This approach is not used, if you remember in the one of the earlier slides I had mentioned, this delta t for a given time interval delta t. In this SCS curve number method, the delta t that we use is 1 day, right? So this entire thing is used to estimate the daily runoff. If I know that I received 2 centimeters of rainfall yesterday, I can use this method to estimate how much runoff would have been generated yesterday using all of these factors. What are all the factors that go into this approach? The soil type, right? So if you go back to this table, the soil type is over here, A, B, C, D. For simplicity, we have divided the soils into four different categories. If you have additional information, maybe you can even come up with more types of soil. But what they have done is used 4 different kinds of soil, and for all these different kinds of land use, you have the curve number, right? So soil type is taken care of in this approach, the land use is taken care of in this approach, and the antecedent moisture conditions is also taken care of in this approach. So all the 3 major factors that influence runoff: the soil type, the land use type, and the antecedent moisture conditions, which means the rainfall received in the previous 5 days. Okay, all of these are taken into account, and this gives us a very, very simple approach for estimating the runoff given a rainfall event of 1 day duration. Okay, any questions on this? Any questions on this? I recognize that this is a little bit complicated, so if you have questions, quickly go ahead and ask me right now. We'll solve one example problem, and that will make it much more clear for you. Any questions? Okay, so let's try to oops, I'm sorry. Yeah, so this is the problem statement. Compute the runoff from 5 inches of rainfall on a 1000 acre watershed. The hydrologic soil group is 50% group B and 50% group C throughout the watershed. Okay, antecedent moisture condition 2 is assumed. Okay, yes, I think somebody has a question. Did anybody raise a hand or something? Okay. Yeah, so the soil type is mentioned. 50% of the watershed is group B, and 50% of the watershed is group C, and it's throughout the watershed, right? It's not like one portion is group B, another portion is group C. It's distributed evenly throughout the watershed. 50% group B, 50% group C. Then the land use is mentioned. 40% residential area, that is 30% impervious. 12% residential area, that is 65% impervious. All of this you'll understand when you go back and look at that table. Okay, that table has all of these things. 18% paved roads with curbs and storm sewers. 16% open land with 50% fair grass cover and 50% good grass cover. Lot of detailed information about the land use. 14% parking lots. Okay, so very detailed information is given to you about the land use. You also know the soil group, the soil type, and antecedent moisture condition 2 is assumed. Okay, so let us just quickly go back to that table over there. Okay, so here you see, can you see my mouse pointer over here? Residential area, percentage impervious. You see over here, 65% impervious. If in a residential area, 65% of my area is impervious, and if the soil type is A, then my curve number is 77. If my soil type is B, then it is 85. If soil type is C, it's 90. And if it's D, it's 92. If only 25% of my area is impervious, then these are the corresponding curve numbers for the different soil groups. And if only 20% is impervious, these are the soil groups. If I have parking lots and paved areas, then these are my curve numbers. If I have open spaces with 50% grass cover or whatever, all of that information is given in this table, right? So if you look at this table, it has all the different pieces of information that you require for estimating the, for estimating the, right? So you're given the different types of land use with the different levels of impervious area and so on. All of that is provided to you. So what you do is okay, so this is the information given on the land use. 30% impervious residential area is there. 65% impervious residential area is also there. So if you go back to that table, right, and then in the columns I have soil group B and soil group C. It was mentioned that soil group B and C are evenly distributed, 50%, 50%. So what they've done is they've taken these different land uses and given 50% to B, 50% to C. So if you look at the problem statement, 40% residential area, that is 30% impervious, right? 40% of the residential area, that is 30% impervious. So what they've done is they've taken this 40% and divided it equally between soil group B and soil group C, right? So 20% of, so half that 40% is in soil group B, half of that 20% is in soil group C, right? Similarly, for 65% impervious, it was 12%, I think. See, 12%. This 12% they've distributed it equally between soil group B and soil group C, 6%, 6%. Similarly, for all these different land uses, it has been distributed equally between soil group B and soil group C. Okay. So now, if you go back to that table, you will obtain the curve numbers. So for this residential 30% impervious with soil group B, the curve number is 72, right? 20% at 72, you multiply the two, you get 1440. So the weighted curve number with the percentage area is 1440. Similarly, here I have 20%, 81, 20 into 81, 1620. Okay. Similarly, for all of these different types, I get all these curve numbers and then multiply it by the percentage. You get these weighted curve numbers. You sum up all the weighted curve numbers, that gives you 4038. Here it's 4340. You understand what I'm doing, right? To get the overall curve number of the entire watershed, you have to take the percentage of these different areas and compute the weighted curve numbers. Then I compute the overall weighted. How do I do that? How do I compute the overall weighted curve number? 50% of the area is giving me a weighted curve number as 4038. This is weighted with the percentage. Okay, remember that. This is 4340 at 50% of the area is giving me a curve number as 4340. Then the overall area will be 4038 plus 4340 divided by 100. Right? And that gives me a curve number of 83.8. Any questions, please ask me. You understand why I'm doing this weighted curve number, right? This curve number of 72 is not for the entire area. It is only for 20% of the area, right? So I do 20 times 72 plus 6 times 85 plus 9 times 98 and so on, and do the same thing for soil group C and divide it by 100, right?
Yes, sir.
Right? It's fine, right? So I do that for the entire area and I get the weighted curve number for the entire watershed. So this curve number is taking into account the soil type, the land use, and the antecedent moisture conditions, because these curve numbers were obtained from the table directly, which is for AMC 2, right? So I obtained the curve number 83.8. Now, does this have any units? It doesn't have any units. It's a unitless, dimensionless number. Okay, I've obtained this 83.8 as the curve number. Then I put it into that equation for S. S equal to 1000 divided by curve number minus 10. When I put that in, I get 1.93 inches for the maximum potential retention. This capital S is the maximum potential retention. Then I put that into my equation PE. I put in this value of S. I have to, of course, check if P is greater than or equal to 0.2 S. That check I have to make. In this case, P is 5 inches, or 5 inches of rainfall was received. Okay. So I put that number into this equation. I get the runoff produced by this watershed. So the runoff produces 3.25 inches. You can convert this into a volume because you know the area of the watershed, right? The area of the watershed was given to you and so on, right? Okay. So we are out of time, I think. Yeah. So so we'll stop for now. We'll continue tomorrow. If you have any questions about the SES curve number method, please feel free to ask me by email or whatever. We can discuss this again in class tomorrow if necessary. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, and see you guys tomorrow.